Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. But today is the 12th of August 2022, the last day of the week, but 2 days before our 75th independence celebrations begin. Pakistan is going to be 75 years old 2 days from now. Nevertheless, we've got lots to discuss on this very day as well. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the presence of ISIL or Daesh and how they are perpetrating different kinds of nefarious activities in Afghanistan and causing, of course, a huge dent to the Afghan Taliban and the Taliban government as currently present in Afghanistan. Now, prominent Taliban religious leader Sheikh Rahimullah Haqqani has also been killed in a bombing attack in a seminary in Kabul, and the ISIL have admitted responsibility behind this. This is not the only time that they have perpetrated attacks into Afghanistan. These attacks go to many years back as well, and of course they have been targeting Shiites, Hazaras, as well as children in different schools. And this is what's going to be our first segment: the presence of ISIL or Daesh and what it means for Afghanistan and the region. Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the monsoon floods and of course the rains that are continuing. We're also predicting more rain in the coming days as well, and how our administration, our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif Saab, has directed the authorities concerned to utilize all the resources for resettlement of the flood victims. He's also called for 5 billion rupees as assistance for the flood victims as well, and other measures are being taken not only by the government but also by the armed forces. This is going to be our second segment. Then we'll be talking about Pakistan and Turkey, who've signed a preferential trade agreement, otherwise known as the Trade in Goods Pact, and this is of course going to further boost trade between Pakistan and Turkey, who are already engaged in robust trade between each other. Nevertheless, this is going to be another good step in the right direction and might lead to a free trade agreement, as was said by Naveed Qamar Saab during the ceremony while signing this preferential trade agreement. Then we'll be talking about the Chief of the Army Staff, Qamar Javed Bajwa Saab, who has recognized the deep-rooted ties between Pakistan and the United Kingdom. He was the chief guest at the passing out parade at the Royal Military Academy, where 2 Pakistani cadets were also passing out. Nevertheless, it's a huge sign of honor for Pakistan that the Pakistani Chief of the Army Staff is the guest of honor, and that too shows deep-rooted and a strong relationship between our two countries. This was also stated in a tweet by our Premier later in the day. Then finally, we'll be talking about Western Europe, that is battling on Thursday from a fallout of extreme heat and drought, whereas drought is also being seen in countries of Europe such as Italy and Spain. It is the United Kingdom that is reeling from the effects of drought, and of course measures are being taken in the United Kingdom as well so as not to go to an extreme situation due to this drought-like condition that has plagued now the country. We're going to talk about the extreme temperatures, the effect of climate change as our last story. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns Daesh, ISIL, and how it is perpetrating attacks into Afghanistan, causing serious dent for the Afghan government that is being led by the Taliban. What is happening exactly? We'll be discussing that in detail, but after this short report.
As the security situation in Afghanistan continues to deteriorate, the prospect of foreign militants relocating there from conflict zones elsewhere is becoming more likely. This development is certain to have a dangerous spillover effect in the region, particularly in Pakistan, where signs of an uptick in militancy are already being felt. A prominent Taliban cleric, Sheikh Rahimullah Haqqani, was killed in an attack in a seminary in Kabul, where the attacker detonated explosives hidden in a plastic artificial leg, according to Taliban sources. The Islamic State claimed responsibility, according to its channel on Telegram. Earlier, a late-night roadside bombing in eastern Afghanistan killed Abdul Wali, also known as Umar Khalid Khurasani, who was a top commander of Tehreek Taliban Pakistan and was allegedly behind some of the deadliest attacks in recent years. The renewed threat of ISIS resurgence in Afghanistan jeopardizes peace and stability of entire region and requires joint counter-terrorism strategy. Islamabad has demanded that the new Taliban rulers next door prevent armed groups from using Afghan territory for attack inside Pakistan. Pakistan has been negotiating with the TTP, and the peace talks began in October last year but picked up pace in April when there was a renewed push from Afghan Taliban seeking a peace deal between Pakistan and the TTP.
Now, of course, the presence of ISIL in Afghanistan is no hidden secret. It has been shown by the United States of America as well as countries such as China that have showed extreme concern about the presence of such outfits into Afghanistan. This said, ISIL has been creating a lot of disturbance within Afghanistan in the form of attacks. It has caused damage and to lives. It has caused loss of lives in the different attacks that is perpetrated from other countries as well into Afghanistan and within Afghanistan as well. Now, regular attacks that have been claimed by the ISIL affiliate known as the Islamic State in Khorasan province, or ISIS-K, has taken place in recent months, whether it be attacks on mosques or on minorities in Afghanistan, especially the Hazara Shiites. In June, this group claimed responsibility on the attack on a Sikh temple in Kabul that killed 2 people. Also in April of this year, a blast had ripped through a school in Kabul, killing high school students. The ISIL-K also claimed responsibility behind that. Explosions destroyed also 2 mosques and a minibus in the north of the country, for which they also claimed responsibility. 3 more explosions targeted Shiite and Sufi Muslims as well. Then in April, the group also fired rockets into Uzbekistan from northern Afghanistan as well. This was the first such attack into another country, into a Central Asian country, especially from within Afghanistan. Now, since the ISIS-K has been founded, it has been antagonistic towards the Afghan Taliban. Therefore, of course, there is a lot of apprehension as to how the Afghan Taliban are going to deal with the ISIS-K, otherwise known as Daesh. Also, the Islamic State has grown in size, we know that, and it has expanded now to almost 34 provinces within Afghanistan as per the United Nations mission that is present in the country. Also, the United Nations has found that the number of Islamic State fighters in Afghanistan has now doubled to around 4,000. There have been different incidents, we've talked about some of them, that the Daesh or ISIS-K has claimed responsibility for. There was also retaliation from the Afghan Taliban when they of course had a brutal campaign last year against these insurgencies by the ISIS-K. What happens as far as and how different the ISIS-K are from other militant outfits is that while in other countries, such as Syria or other countries where their presence, the presence of Islamic State is, they do not seize property in Afghanistan. They have kind of tried to show their ability towards violent chaos despite the Taliban's heavy-handed tactics. Also, targeting the Hazara Shiites is regularity as far as the ISIS-K is concerned. A lot of Shiites and Hazaras in Afghanistan are quite disturbed or are on edge because of being targeted by them. In October also last year, blasts happened in the Shia mosque in Kandahar during Friday prayers, killing 60 people in the deadliest attack since the departure of the US troops. This attack was also claimed by the ISIS-K chapter, and there is the whole lot of incidents that have been happening in the country as far as terrorism is concerned, and as far as targeting not only children but also minorities such as the Shiite community in Afghanistan is concerned. A lot of analysts say that the ISIS-K are an enemy or are antagonists of the Afghan Taliban. In that scenario, in that case, what needs to be done? What kind of movement needs to be brought forward as far as the Afghan Taliban are concerned? We've been joined by Brigadier Retired Nadir Mir Saab. Nadir Mir Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Brigadier Saab, when it concerns the ISIS-K or of course the Khorasan chapter of the ISIL, or otherwise also known as Daesh, many analysts call them antagonists of the Afghan Taliban. Do you feel that the Afghan Taliban can contain all the movement of this extremist terrorist group, or do you feel they will need the assistance of other countries?
The situation in Afghanistan in the post-American exit period has been greatly managed or mostly managed by the Afghan Taliban who took Kabul. After some times, there has been a resurgence of other terrorist and militant activities as you are just mentioning. Well, it's obvious that the Afghan government, that is the Afghan Taliban government, which is in power in Afghanistan, needs support, not only from its neighbors Pakistan, but also, they have their funds tied up by United States and other things, because they have to function more smoothly, and they should be made responsible for the security of Afghanistan, not only by assisting them, but by also conditioning them. Because after all, any terrorism in Afghanistan spills over to Pakistan also. As you've recently heard and we have seen, that all this can happen, and we have to be very careful on that part, because besides Afghanistan, our final concern is Pakistan. And in KPK, as you know, recently there was this, whether they were Daesh or TTP, or regardless of the name of the militants or the terrorists or whoever, we have to be ensuring the security of Pakistan and, of course, helping Afghanistan. And recently, General Sardar Hassan has been put as the Corps Commander in Peshawar, because he is not only very competent and brave, but also he's very experienced. Served there in KPK and on the Pakistan's western border, and inshallah he will soon be bringing more stability to this entire area. And so we have to see it both, that is within Pakistan, that is KPK and Balochistan, and transfrontier. When we say transfrontier, we mean across the western border of Pakistan, which means Afghanistan here. And in that context, we have to support Afghanistan, and we should get other countries to support it also, because in the final analysis, it is in the world's interest that Afghanistan does not become a haven for all kind of terror and militant groups once again. It is in the world's interest. And for that, we need a larger, maybe a global conference, or at least regional conferences, because, in the north of Afghanistan, there is Central Asia. So Russia also has a one, and of course, America recently carried out a strike, as you know, in Kabul. So the Americans and the Western allies already have a concern. The Chinese have expressed a concern. So Pakistan should lead this political, geopolitical, diplomatic. It should serve as a platform for ensuring the peace of Afghanistan in multifaceted ways.
All right, Brigadier Sahib, also the Chief of the Army Staff, General Bajwa, had termed terrorism as a global threat while he was talking to his Iraqi counterpart very recently. He said that terrorism has the potential to destabilize the region and called for a well-coordinated response to counter it. Now, we are seeing what the ISISK is doing in Afghanistan. We are seeing what other factions are also doing in Pakistan through Afghanistan. How should the strategy be evolved as to counter such threats?
General Bajwa has correctly, the Army Chief has identified, also talked at various, not only at this, but other forums also, because terrorism or this kind of asymmetrical war which is being waged against Pakistan is also being waged in Afghanistan and all. And we have to see it in the first global and then the regional context. And of course, Pakistan is primary for us. Ultimately, we have to ensure Pakistan's security. So what we have to do is, we have to see that where is the source of this terrorism in Afghanistan or around, because the terrorists need a base of operations to operate from. I mean, there can be lone wolves or that isolated forms of terrorism, whether in United States or whether in the east or west or part of the world. That's another matter. But organized terrorists operating from a base need a safe haven, and they need logistics and funds and supplies, the whole package. So we have to ensure that that does not happen, because there is a geopolitical factor to this. In Pakistan's case, that is Afghanistan, the Indians who were ousted from Afghanistan are trying to make a comeback into Afghanistan. And one of the reasons that of the resurgence of terrorism or militants of Afghanistan is the Indian efforts. And though they couch it or they camouflage it with the so-called soft power of India, but actually their target is Pakistan, because they've been using Afghanistan as a second front against Pakistan. So we have to ward off that also. So in the overall sense, we have to look at this whole picture of stability that you need against terrorist threats, and it has to be done collectively. Pakistan can lead the charge, but it cannot do it alone, because it's not only Pakistan's problem, it's a regional plus global problem.
All right. Now, there have been recent killings of important leaders in the past few weeks, whether it be on August 2nd when Joe Biden announced the killing of Al-Qaeda chief Ayman al-Zawahiri, whether it be Omar Khalid Khorasani, who is a TTP commander who was also killed, whether it be also Sheikh Rahimullah Haqqani, a prominent Taliban religious leader who was also killed by the ISIS-K. Now, three important, deaths or killings have occurred in the last few weeks. Is that going to change the way different groups or factions are working in the area?
The death or targeting of a key militant terrorist leader will have a certain effect, for that is for sure, because everybody is not qualified in that sense, qualified to lead that group in that sense, or accepted as such, because there are always rivals and there is politics even there. But in the overall sense, we have to see the last many decades that such organizations of militants or terrorists or non-state actors, militant, armed non-state actors, they have a sort of a system of their own and a hierarchy of their own and a chain of command of their own. I mean, it may not be comparable to the rest of the world, but they have. And what has happened is that a new leader or a new commander or a new person has led them, if not immediately, after some time. So by mere targeting of the leaders or the heads of these organizations, the problem will not finish, though that might reduce or their effectiveness, at least temporarily. So a more comprehensive package is needed, and this is not simply a military package. This one part is stopping the terrorists who are attacking or eliminating them, but there is another part. Who are the people who are joining these terrorists, and why are they joining them? I mean, it's not just Afghans, there are other nationalities also. So you have to overall, I'm trying to explain that there has to be a global and a regional workout on this, and Pakistan can lead this because it has been most affected and it's very experienced. Pakistan Army has more successfully than other countries, waged this anti-terrorist war and won the anti-terrorist war. While the United States, after 2 decades, left Afghanistan and virtually handed over to the same old Taliban or Afghan Taliban, Pakistan was able to secure its borders, in this period at great cost. Our young officers and soldiers sacrificed themselves, and the nation sacrificed a lot, but still we were able to win this war. And so what we have to do is to ensure that the source or the reason why these things are happening, that involves social, economic, financial, justice and education and health and whatnot. This is a long list. So somebody has to get into that business also of ensuring, because the previous reason was that the United States was occupying Afghanistan. So there was a foreign power and there was resistance to it. That is no longer the case. So it's the post-exit US has to be seen as a new environment, and a new strategy has to be evolved for it.
Exactly, and I totally agree with you as far as a new strategy that needs to be involved, because it is because of the ouster of the US that groups such as the ISIS-K have gained momentum, and the way they are targeting different areas and schools and Shiites in Afghanistan is something that needs to be taken care of before it's way too late, because Afghanistan for the moment it itself, as you've yourself pointed out, embroiled in economic and humanitarian condition where it needs money to sustain itself, and if it does not get that money, it won't be able to fight properly elements such as the ISIS-K, which are hell-bent on gaining more place or power within of Afghanistan. Let's see what the coming weeks have in store for Afghanistan, and let's see how the West also reacts to these spate of incidents that have engulfed Afghanistan. Thank you very much, Brigadier Saab, to have joined us. That was Brigadier Nadir Saab joining us and talking to us about this latest spate of incidents that the ISIS-K have claimed responsibility for. The latest is the prominent Taliban religious leader Sheikh Rahimullah Haqqani, who has been killed in a seminary in Kabul, and this of course has been owned by the ISIS-K. Let's come to our second segment, and that concerns the monsoon floods in Pakistan and the different measures that the country is taking to help the people, the affectees of the floods. More in the following report.
Pakistan is grappling with challenging monsoon season as torrential rains caused massive flash floods in Balochistan, Sindh and southwest Punjab, inflicting huge loss of human lives and properties. Flash floods caused by abnormally heavy monsoon rains killed at least 549 people in Pakistan over the past month, according to government sources, with remote communities in the impoverished southwestern province of Balochistan among the hardest hit. Aside from the fatalities, the flooding had damaged more than 46,000 houses, according to National Disaster Management Authority. According to NDMA, the past month was the wettest in 3 decades, with 133% more rain than the average for the past 30 years, and Balochistan received 305% more rain than the annual average. Government agencies and the army have set up aid and relief camps in flood-hit regions and are working to help relocate families and provide food and medicines. Prime Minister has directed the authorities concerned to utilize all the resources for resettlement of the flood victims. Presiding over the review meeting on the rehabilitation of flood victims, Prime Minister expressed his satisfaction over the steps taken for the rehabilitation of the victims. Climate Change Minister Shahri Rahman warned that more rains were expected in the coming weeks of August. Therefore, the Federal Cabinet had declared a monsoon emergency.
Now, journalist joins us online. Kaswar, thank you very much to have joined us. Kaswar, when you look at the floods and of course the damage that is caused, whether it be infrastructure or cattle or crops or even people, the number of lives that have been lost or people who have been injured, do you feel the government is working in the right direction? Do you feel more needs to be done? What's your take on that?
Well, Omar, thank you for having me on show once again. Well, as you have rightly pointed out, that the government has been working on different strategy as well. I think I am satisfied that the government utilized, all of the available resources, mobilized every party over there, and the statement by the Prime Minister of Pakistan is really important, and that is he called upon the philanthropist and the government and every party. And I think I am satisfied that the way the government has responded to this disaster, that is really impressive. And the financial position of Pakistan and other things as well. But despite all odds, the way the government of Pakistan has responded to this disaster, that is really impressive. They have reached out to the former government, I mean the PTI. They have reached out to all of the opposition parties, and also the way they reach out to the Pakistan Armed Forces, that is really impressive. And I am very much satisfied that this sort of, efforts were expected from Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif government, and they have done very, they have done great job until now. And I am expected the way they have responded to this disaster. I am, very satisfied, and the future they will done the more job as well. And so far the job has been done very well from both civilian and armed forces as well.
All right, Kaswar, let's talk about the importance and the role of the NDMA, the PDMA, as well as the National Highway Authority. Now, the Prime Minister, at the same time, when he's appreciated the role of these authorities, at the same time, he's also said that they need to improve their skills in the view of more rains that are going to affect Pakistan in the coming days as well. How important is the role of the NDMA, of the NHA?
I think one of the most important thing, Barsab, is that the civilian government has mobilized all of the efforts at hand. The Prime Minister has sanctioned 5 billion, the Pakistan rupees for Balochistan. That is a huge amount as well. But when we talk about the skills and other things, definitely they are really very important. And let me tell you that the Prime Minister of Pakistan has reached out to the Turkish brothers as well. And according to my information, they seek their expertise in this, disaster management as well. But so far, the response by the provincial and the government, governments, provincial and the federal governments have been really impressive, and armed forces are doing very well. We have lost our 5 Son of Sahel. They were on duty, and I think expertise is really very important. The skills are really very important, but I think you have at least mobilized all of the resources at your hand. That is really impressive. But I am sure the Prime Minister of Pakistan, the way we have seen that they have reached out to the Turkish brothers and sisters as well, and the government of Tayyip Erdogan as well, I think the need is to entertain, to equip a national disaster management authority at par with the international community standards as well. There is always a room to burst up, always room to improvement. I think the government of Pakistan is doing a very impressive job, but definitely you rightly pointed out, we need to increase, we need to enhance the skills of all of the people who are working under the banner of National Disaster Management Authority and the provincial management authorities as well. There is
as well as the National Highway Authority. I think it's very important, and this is not me, this is not myself who said that, it's the Prime Minister of Pakistan,
exactly.
Shehbaz Sharif, who said that. Nevertheless, when you look at the monsoon rains and the percentage of monsoon rains that have affected Pakistan, 60% of the total monsoon rainfall has happened in just 3 weeks' time, Kaswar. Do you feel we need to be prepared now for future rains and for the years that are going to come ahead as well, because Pakistan is one of the most vulnerable countries when it comes to climate change?
Well, you have rightly pointed out, you have raised a very good question, but let me tell you, as you have rightly pointed out, that the 60% of the total rainfall we have seen in just 3 weeks. And I think any of the developed or underdeveloped country could not prepare for such spell of the rains as well. But so far, as I told you earlier, that we have done very well. The government was really prepared. But when you when you have 60% of the total monsoon spell in just 3 weeks, I think such type of disaster were expected, not only in Balochistan, but also we have seen in the South Punjab and all other parts of the Pakistan as well. So Pakistan, let me draw your attention to the statement of our young and aggressive foreign minister. I think 2 or 3 months before, he has appeared in one of a crucial meeting over there, and he raised such a valid point over there at the forum of international community as well. Sherry Rahman has been raising this point, and she has done very well. I think we were fully prepared, but given the circumstances, as I told you earlier, when we have 60% of the rainfall in just 3 weeks, total monsoon period. So definitely either you were fully prepared, there is no doubt about that, but it was such sort of calamity and disaster that any of the country in the world could face such type of circumstances like we have been facing since 3-4 weeks as well. I think we were fully prepared, but there were, you need to understand, Barsab, there were unprecedented, the rainfall across the country. 60% of the total monsoon period.
But Kaswar, we've seen a totally different monsoon season this year, and I think we should expect more changes in the monsoon season, in the winters, in the summers, in the coming years as well. Do we need to prepare ourselves for that?
Exactly, we need to prepare. As I told you earlier, that the Prime Minister of Pakistan has directed the concerned department to reach out to the friendly countries, to entertain, to equip their people, the National Disaster Management Authority, and also they have reached out to the Punjab government as well. To when it comes to the federal government, Sherry Rahman has done an impressive job, and she has been reaching out to the provinces as well. So I think in winter we can expect more harsh weather, and the way the federal government has cautioned all of the provincial, authorities, that is really impressive. We are fully prepared, but definitely you cannot fight against unprecedented and harsh weather. But the way the government has responded to this type of disaster, that is really impressive. They have already reached out to the friendly countries who have expertise to face such type of disaster, and they have equipment at hand as well. I think the government has shown its intentions, and in the future, if we face such type of disaster, we will be fully equipped. And I think the way such type of disasters has caused devastation, like 400 people have been killed across the country. I think if such type of disaster happens next time in Pakistan, the government will be fully equipped to cope with such type of disaster, and the government has shown their intentions as well. And I am very satisfied the way the government have responded to such type of disaster, and that is really impressive.
All right, Kaswar, any effort that a government makes or administration makes needs to be supported by the people, by the private sector as well. Pakistan is reeling by the consequences of a climate emergency, and we've seen an example of that during this current monsoon season. What is the responsibility of citizens like myself, yourself, and the business community as well to help the government, to help our armed forces in this hour of need? Because this needs to be a collective responsibility to not only help the people in need, but also prepare ourselves for all future calamities.
Well, we were least prepared when it comes to this sort of disaster. Like we have seen, the flood have caused devastation in South Punjab, and South Punjab, the people were really ill-equipped. And the same was the condition in there in Balochistan as well. I am just talking about the people of Pakistan. Well, when we talk about the wealthy people, the NGOs and other sort of the organization, the response from those people and the organization has been very slow, unfortunately. But on the part of the government, as I told you earlier, we are satisfied, and they have mobilized their resources. The government of Pakistan, the federal government of Pakistan has sanctioned 5 billion Pak rupees, and I have got the information that they are also sanctioned more, the funds for Balochistan and South Punjab as well. I think the government was fully prepared, but it is the responsibility of the people of Pakistan as well. Like I told you, in South Punjab, every 5 or 6 years, such type of floods are a normal routine. And we have to equip ourselves as well. But this time in Dera Ghazi Khan, in Laya and other sort of districts, the people were not prepared for such type of disaster. And according to my information, even there is sadly a community which have built their homes in the way of the nullas and the rivers as well. So this is some sort of lack of knowledge or some sort of on the part of the people. They must be very equipped as well. But the thing is, in such type of disaster, all including me as well, we just start looking to the government of Pakistan. Definitely the government of Pakistan as a underdeveloped country, they lack some funds as well. But no, you have rightly pointed out, this is the responsibility of the government and also the people of Pakistan as well. But the government have played their role impressively, but on the part of the people, the wealthy people, and also the victim, I am not satisfied with their performance because they were not fully aware about the conditions. Even in South Punjab, the people know the flood makes its way after 5 and 6 years. They know it's a routine, but sadly they did not take precautions. I think it's a failure on their part, but the government would have impressively. And I am very satisfied the way the government has responded in Punjab and Balochistan and even in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as well. So federal government has played its part, and it's the time for the provincial governments as well to cope with such a disaster as well.
Kaswar, this is of course a result of climate change. Whatever is happening, whether it be excessive rains or drought or flooding or even extreme winters, there are different factors that contribute to the current condition that we are engulfed in. One or two of the states that we could maybe take care of is A, the environmental pollution that big cities like Lahore and Karachi, we see them, both these cities have been named by many important international organizations as one of the worst polluted cities in the world. Exactly. Not only that, we have a huge problem as far as waste management is concerned as well in both these cities as well. Do you feel efforts need to be also taken to manage these two important things, that is environmental pollution and waste management? Maybe that would also help us with and maybe our climate would be much better in the years to come if we manage these things accordingly.
Exactly. The big city in Pakistan, including Karachi, Lahore, and also Peshawar as well. We need to stress on the waste management as well. But when it's come to the Lahore, you have rightly pointed out that has been the most polluted cities in the world. But I must tell you that the former government of Pakistan, the way they sanctions another huge project on the bank of Ravi. I think that is a total disaster. That is a total disaster because we have to save our cities when it comes to Lahore and Karachi as well. And you have rightly pointed out, we are not fully prepared. It's the responsibility of the federal and as well as the provincial governments to stress on the management of the big city. Sadly, we have failed on this front, and I think you've rightly pointed out the government must take precautions, must take such type of stresses on the waste management and the big cities management as well. Even we have seen in the New York, in Toronto, and other big cities as well, even in Chicago. They have fully prepared, the plans, the institutions to take care of, to cope with such type of disaster. But sadly, in Pakistan, not a single government has, taken care of. And I think it is the right time for the government, the federal government and the provincial government to take care of this side of story as well. And this is the need of our Warsaw.
All right. When you look at climate change, of course, the responsibility is on the government, but it's not just the responsibility of the government, it's also the responsibility of the private sector. When you see, there are so many different aspects to climate change, Kaswar, and flooding is just one of the reactions, resultant reactions of climate change. There are going to be many others, and we need to be, as I've already discussed, pre-prepared for all of this. Nevertheless, how important is the role of the private sector as well? I mean, I think it's extremely pertinent that they also involve themselves along with the government, along with all the social organizations, the non-governmental organizations that are working to alleviate the effects of climate change in Pakistan.
But when we talk about Pakistan's private sector, they have disappointed us. They have disappointed us. We have seen the role of the big companies in the past as well. They have invested in each and every sector, but they never taken care of the climate exchange as well. I remember once I belong to Laya city, and we have a huge structure of the millers, the sugarcane mills as well. Once I asked the manager of that mill that have you taken all of the circumstances, the chimney as well, have you taken care of the atmosphere as well? But sadly, he was not aware about the clouds emanating from his mills, and he was not aware about the impact on the environment. And this is just a glimpse of the sad story, and I think this is the dire need for the private sector to come join hands with the government, because government has its limitations as well.
Of course, I think it's a collective responsibility, Kaswar, to edit all. It's a collective responsibility.
Exactly.
It's a responsibility of us, the people. It's a responsibility of the different governments, the provincial and the federal government, and it is a responsibility of the private sector to work collectively, jointly, not only to help the people in this hour of need, but also to prepare ourselves for the future, for the coming years, because climate change is not going away, but we need to prepare ourselves, and we need to alleviate all the factors that are contributing towards climate change in Pakistan. Thank you very much, Kaswar Klasra, to have joined us. That was, of course, renowned journalist Kaswar Klasra talking to us about the efforts that the government is putting in as far as the victims of flood as a result of the huge monsoon that has engulfed Pakistan, and the casualties that it has caused as far as people are concerned, crops are concerned, cattle are concerned, and of course lands are also concerned. The efforts are of course extremely lauded, and the role of the NDMA, the NHA and the PDMA are also extremely lauded, and I think it's very important that they strengthen themselves in the months to come. Let's come to our last three stories, ladies and gentlemen, on a very quick note. The first is the preferential trade agreement that has been signed between Pakistan and Turkiye to further cement the historic bilateral ties. This is called a goods in trade agreement. Now, Turkish Trade Minister Dr. Mehmet Musa and Minister for Commerce Sayyid Naveed Kamar signed the accord. Our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif was also present during this ceremony. This preferential trade agreement includes a comprehensive provision on bilateral safeguards, balance of payment exceptions, dispute settlement, and a periodic review of the agreement. The key highlights as far as this PTA is concerned is that Turkey has offered concessions to Pakistan on 261 tariff lines that include key items of Pakistan's export interest to Turkey from both the agriculture and the industrial sectors. This, of course, comes to more or less $5.1 billion US. Global imports in these products of Turkey are $7.6 billion. Pakistan, on the other hand, has offered concessions to Turkey on 130 tariff lines, and Turkey's global exports in these products are $23 billion US, and Pakistan's global imports in these products are $6 billion US. These negotiations, as far as the preferential trade agreement, had started some time back, but it is because of the efforts of the current government and, of course, our Prime Minister who had gone to Turkey that kind of sped up this efforts. And as Naveed Kamar Saab has said also, that it might lead in very shortly or in the coming days or weeks to a free trade agreement between the two countries as well. Nevertheless, a very good, of course, news as far as the trade is concerned. Pakistan's strengthening in the trade arena is extremely important in this day and age, and this is just one very strong step in that very direction. Then our next story concerns the Chief of the Army Staff, who is in England at this moment. He was a chief guest at the passing out parade at the Royal Military Academy in Sandhurst. And of course, this is a huge achievement for Pakistan, because not only does it show the strength of the relationship between both the countries in the defense sector, but it also shows the respect that the United Kingdom gives to Pakistan. The fact that our Chief of the Army Staff was the chief guest at such an important occasion. Two Pakistani cadets are also graduating with the other graduates today. This is what was said by Chief of the Army Staff, General Bajwa Sahab, and he said that he was as proud of them as he was of all the other cadets. He also said that his presence at the Academy today bore testimony to the deep-rooted relationship shared by Pakistan and the United Kingdom based on mutual respect and shared values. Of course, very good news, and we are seeing strengthening of ties between the West and Pakistan. And finally, we are going to talk about climate change. We've talked about climate change as far as Pakistan is concerned, but let's go to Europe and talk about how Europe is also reeling under the effects of climate change, whether it be France, Gironde, where the fires are engulfing that region of the France, and France has asked for other countries of the European Union to help it out to diffuse to douse these fires, and a lot of countries are helping France as far as that is concerned, because it has activated the EU civil protection mechanism that allows other EU countries to divert their resources to the country. Italy, Spain and the United Kingdom, ladies and gentlemen, are also suffering. Italy, farmers in some parts of the country have lost up to 80% of their harvest this year. Drought has affected Italy as well. Spain's National Weather Agency warns of high temperatures across Spain as the heat wave on the peninsula continues. Temperatures are expected to rise above 40 degrees Celsius. For Europe, 40 degrees Celsius is huge. For Pakistan, it might not be, but for Europe, it definitely is. Also, the United Kingdom is suffering another week of high temperatures. Not only is it suffering this high week of high temperatures, but also today, Britain has officially declared drought in parts of England as households face new water usage restrictions during a prolonged dry and hot spell. Parts of southern, central and eastern England are now in drought status. So a lot of measures have been taken now by the United Kingdom government so as to douse the effects of this drought-like condition that has engulfed the United Kingdom as well. So we were talking of Pakistan. You also see how other countries in the West are being affected by climate change as well. It needs a collective effort, not only by Pakistan, but by every country, by the United Nations, and they need to come as one to try to do their utmost to relieve the world of what we call climate change. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. Today is the last day of the week, but we'll be back with you on Sunday for a special for the 14th of August. Nevertheless, we need to be careful as far as pandemic such as COVID-19 is concerned. So get yourself vaccinated, follow the SOPs, and take care of yourself and your loved ones. Have a great weekend. We'll see you inshallah on Sunday.